all you're doing here today for this project. So when we're just creating our buttons, like I said, it's just some things that I have seen. So when we're creating buttons, let's just say we create our rectangle button. Depends on you or depends on your client. If they like to have that that pill kind of style button, they might want to have the sharp corners, or perhaps they want to just have a box with just moderate kind of corners. Always noting you could do them through here like you do through Illustrator, but you can also click here and you can actually specifically put in the amount of pixels that you want as well. This button is there so you could put the values in specific. You can put different values in on each one. And this button here is to make them all even. So let's say we're going to say sign up. Let's grab a nice web font. Open. Let's say we're going to go in bold. So I'm going to first color my button. So first and foremost, grab over here. Let's say that's my button. I'm going to take that border off to start. Oops. And for my text, I'm going to make that white. So what I do first is I'm going to make sure that everything is centered and aligned, but I feel like that when I get down to creating different buttons, I want to make sure that my spacing all around, which is called padding all around, is consistent. So when I do that, you can see nothing appears here, but when I highlight that and I Command G to group, we have a little thing that pops up here, which is called padding. So I'm going to turn that padding on. And just as we did with the rounded corners, this offers even amount of spacing around, which I wouldn't recommend because for the most part, you're going to end up with kind of an oddly sized button. So you do want to add them separate. So always when you highlight over or different, when you highlight over your elements, you can see where exactly which side you're adding your padding. So here's on the top. So I'm going to add a little bit less on the top than I am on the side versus all even. Let's say 30, 16, and 30. So now what happens if I go sign, it keeps it consistent. Or maybe it's, so now that padding always stays the same, okay? Just wanted to show you that in regards to padding. Just going over again our components and how we do our hovers. So let's say we want this to have a hover to it, so people know when they're about to click. Always you have your elements grouped. We can right click and say make a component. So now we have a component here. And again, now up here, we have our component main showing up. This is our default state. When we click that plus sign, we can click a hover state. I'm just going to leave it as a hover for now. So up on my default state, I'm happy with how this looks as a default button. Say on my hover, I prefer this to turn into an outline button. So again, making sure I'm highlighting my hover button. You double click to select that element, and here we are. I'm going to take that fill off and I'm going to just put the border back on. I'm going to pick up that color. And then for my fill, generally I would have added this color in. And there we are. Now we can go default, hover, and then always we can press play just to make sure that things work. So always nice to add a little bit of a hover to things as well. Some other elements that you folks could add, you'll see in this little button tutorial, there's like solid button, ghost buttons, round buttons, etc. They talk about, I believe they touch upon some shadowings. What other great things are here for when we're talking about the colors that immediately come to mind, you know, that little bit of psychology essentially behind this, which is delete is red, warnings, save, more, etc. So kind of creating our own buttons is nice, but sticking within, I don't want to use the word trends, but sticking within what people know and are comfortable with is also very good. So let's just say this would be more so of a trend. Let's leave that little button there. Sorry about the noise here, team. Let's make. I'm going to create a drop shadow. It's nice to create a drop shadow that is the same color as your button as well, instead of introducing a wild new color. It almost just adds a little bit of softness to it versus that gray drop shadow. So that might be something you want to integrate as well. We don't need to have those shadows go out too far. Sometimes a nice little sharp shadow is nice. Maybe not adding a ton of blur on there. So have a little bit of play. I know it might seem a little daunting with all of those screens, but again, you're essentially just creating or designing a couple screens, and then you're just duplicating and adding those extra steps in there to create your actual button step or your prototyping and steps. Any questions in regards? Hi, Margarita. Any questions in regards to the assignment or the tutorial?